Hi there, Alison here with another Cabernet Franc du jour. Today's wine is taking us to Brézé in the Saumur Rouge, and we're looking at the Domaine Guiberteau 2018 Saumur Rouge, Les Arboises. The story of Domaine Guiberteau, as we know it today, begins with Romain Guiberteau's grandfather, Robert, who inherited his first parcels of vines in the commune of Saint-Just-sur-Dive from his father-in-law back in 1935. Following the war, Robert's pursuits as a vigneron became more serious, and recognizing the long viticultural history and the potential of the vineyards of Brézé, Robert acquired his first parcels here back in 1954, which included among them the famed Clos de Carmes and Les Arboises, which today represent the domaine's top white and red wine, respectively. Following Robert's retirement in 1976, there were no heirs who were interested in taking up reins at the domaine, so the domaine's parcels were then rented to the cooperative. That is until the mid-1990s, when Romain Guiberteau made the decision to return to the family domaine to pursue life as a vigneron. Under the guidance of Charly and Nady Foucault of Clos Rougeard, Romain vinified his first wines back in 1996. And then for the better part of the next 20 years, Romain continued this stage at Clos Rougeard, all the while vinifying his own wines and building his domaine into the acclaimed estate that we know today. Today, Domaine Guiberteau spans around 14.5 hectares of vines. About 7.5 are planted with Chenin Blanc and about 7 hectares are planted with Cabernet Franc. And their vineyard parcels are scattered across the communes of Saint-Just-sur-Dive, Montreuil-Bellay, Épied, and of course, Brézé. And in terms of their red wines, they're making 4 reds from Cabernet Franc, and they've recently introduced a rosé from Cabernet Franc as well, which is very exciting. And in terms of their red wines, they have their cuvée Domaine and also the cuvée Les Moulins, and these are both blends from across multiple parcels. And then they also have 2 cuvées parcellaires, and these include Les Arboises, which is in Épied, formerly Brézé, and then also Les Arboises, which is in the commune of Brézé, which is of course the wine that we're looking at today. Their vineyards have been farmed organically since 2003 and certified organic since 2007. The historical commune of Brézé is situated about 10 kilometers south of the town of Saumur, set back from the Loire River. The northern border of the commune shares the southern border of the commune of Saint-Cyr-en-Bourg, which is in saumur-champigny, and then to the east we're bordered by the commune of Épied, to the south Montreuil-Bellay, and to the west we have the commune of Saint-Just-sur-Dive. All of these communes are part of the Saumur Rouge. The vineyards in Brézé are concentrated in an area that is about 2.5 kilometers wide from east to west and about 2.5 kilometers from north to south. And the vineyards follow what is essentially referred to as the Brézé Hill in most texts and articles. This hill rises to a height of around 85 meters above sea level. And the vineyard area follows the perimeter of this peak to the north, northeast, east, and south. And the vineyards slope gently downwards to an elevation of around 50 meters above sea level in the north and northeastern parts of the commune. And then in the eastern and southern parts of the communes, the vineyards tend to level off at around 60 to 65 meters above sea level. Because of the positioning of this hill, we will find a number of different exposures across the commune of Brézé. But in general, we will find more north-facing exposures in the northern part of the commune and more southern exposures in the southern part of the commune. Now, in terms of soils, the terroir landscape across Brézé is very complex and it is by no means homogeneous, but there are some generalizations that we can make. First and foremost, across the commune of Brézé, we tend to find more shallow topsoils. That is to say that we are hitting the mother rock from 50 to 90 centimeters from the surface. In addition to this, elevation across the commune can give us a little bit of an indication as to what soils and soil origins we find where. So on these lower lying slopes, this is in the northern part and the southern part of the commune, this is where we find vineyards at elevations of around 50 to 65 or so meters above sea level. And this is where we find the influence of the Middle Turonian tuffeau chalk, which here is a glauconitic micaceous chalk that is known locally as craie verte. On these lower slopes, the topsoils will be a little bit more shallow, and we actually find a little bit more silt and clay in the topsoils here as well. Now, in terms of the center of the commune, there's this narrow band of vineyards that follows the crest of the Brézé hill from west to east. And here we are at higher elevations. The elevations range from around 70 to upwards to 85 meters above sea level. And this is where we find quite the patchwork of soils. We find the Upper Turonian tuffeau chalk here. We also find a heavier red clay that dates to the Bartonian age. There's also the sands and clay sands that date to the Sannonian age, and even alterations or alternating layers of these soils in this part of the commune as well. Also at these higher elevations, the topsoil tends to be a little bit deeper in places, as well as we find a lot more sand in the topsoil here as well. Now, when it comes to Cabernet Franc in Brézé, because of the fact that we're set back from the Loire River, we're in a cooler microclimate as a whole here in Brézé. Also, we have a number of different exposures, and we have these more shallow topsoils. In order for Cabernet Franc to be very successful in Brézé, site selection becomes quite critical. And ideally, we want to plant Cabernet Franc on deeper soils in Brézé, on these deeper sites that have a little bit better chance of water holding capacity and better vine balance. Which of course brings me to Les Arboises, which just happens to be a lieu-dit that is on very Cabernet Franc friendly soils. So this lieu-dit is about 1 hectare in total. It is a monopole for Domaine Guiberteau. And as I mentioned, this parcel was acquired back in 1954 by Romain's grandfather, and it was planted by Massal selection in 1957 by Romain's grandfather. And we are situated in the westernmost part of that crest of the Brézé hill here. So we're just a few hundred meters east of the Château de Brézé, and we are at a higher elevation here. So the vineyard is on more of a south-southwest facing exposure, and we're at an elevation of around 80 to 85 meters above sea level, which means that we are at one of the highest points in the Brézé commune here at Les Arboises. Now, in terms of the soils here, as I mentioned, at these higher elevations, this is where we find a bit of a patchwork of soils. So here in Les Arboises, we have soils that date to the Sannonian age, and they are sands with quartz clays. And in terms of the topsoil texture, it is a clay sand, or in French, they call this sable argileux, which is about 70% sand content. And then the topsoil has about 25 to 50% stoniness. And then in terms of the subsoil, we have deeper soils here, which is great for Cabernet Franc. And the subsoil is also that clay sand, so that sable argileux. And in terms of the soils as a whole, we have over a meter of topsoil here before we hit that tuffeau bedrock. And as an interesting fact here, Robin, his grandfather, had this rule when it came to planting Chenin versus planting Cabernet Franc. And Romain's grandfather basically said, okay, if you've got a meter or more of topsoil, that's where you plant Cabernet Franc. If you have less than a meter of topsoil, that's where you plant Chenin Blanc. And Romain continues to abide by this rule today when it comes to planting and replanting his vineyards. Now, in terms of the winemaking for this wine, one thing that is important to note about Romain's approach is that he tends to pick on the earlier side, focusing more on skin ripeness as opposed to seed ripeness. So for this wine, this was hand harvested, it was all destemmed and hand sorted. And then the fermentation is in wooden vats, like larger wooden vats with indigenous yeast. And the total time on skins is only 15 days. The approach to extractions here is infusion. So we're not doing any active punch downs or pump overs or things like that. It's really gentle. That's important because, again, we're picking a little bit more on the earlier side here. So following the time on skins, the free run wine is drained off the skins, and then Romain will check the pressings and taste the pressings and decide whether or not to incorporate any of the press wine into the finished cuvée. And then in terms of the aging, this is the only red cuvée that sees any new oak aging. So about 50% of the barrels are new, 50% are second use. And then following about 2 years, 24 months aging in barrel, the wine is then aged in stainless steel for about 6 months before the wine is bottled. So let's get into this wine. Well, as you will notice, I poured this from a decanter, one of the benefits of this new table setup that I am giving a try. And I did want to decant this wine because I knew it was a young wine. I knew that it would likely need quite a bit of air. This is really the most age-worthy of the Guiberteau wines. So this has been in the decanter now for probably 4-ish hours at this point. So the nose is finally starting to give me a little bit of something. So the nose leans in this red fruit spectrum, kind of sweet, savory fruits. I'm smelling like a little bit of like morello cherry. There's a touch of wild blueberry. There's a little bit of lingonberry here as well. And the nose does lean more savory, but it's like an herbal undertone, which is really pretty. And it's a mix of soft herbs like basil, chervil. There's even a little bit of like a nettle thing going on. It's a beautiful perfume to the wine, a light, airy kind of rose petal perfume. There's also some nice spiciness to the nose as well. And that could be a bit of oak spice here that is coming forward, like that baking spice kind of thing. But there's also some varietal spice here. There's a little bit of smoke here on the nose, and really there is some oak presence on the nose, but it isn't by any means in your face or over the top. The nose is just, it's really welcoming. It's got this just very inviting profile. It just makes you want to dive in. On the palate, those same red fruits come through. They come through a little bit more tart on the palate, a little bit more of like a cranberry red currant thing going on as well. The palate is quite spicy, and it is just an absolute plethora of spices going on here. There's like a fennel note. There's a little bit of nutmeg here. There's almost like a ginger bread note, like a gingerbread cookie note as well. There's a few other things going on the palate in terms of flavors. There's a little bit of like a blood orange juice thing happening. And there's also a little bit more of a kind of pencil shaving thing happening. There's a little bit of a salty edge to the wine as well, which is kind of interesting. In terms of the acidity is really bright. There's a nice juiciness factor to the acidity. The acidity is almost a little bit crunchy as well. Yeah, great persistence to the acidity, and the acidity really actually comes in kind of at the end. So it's not like acidity in your face when you kind of first sip the wine. It kind of is what I often refer to as like sneaky acidity. It's like the wine has left your mouth, and then all of a sudden you get this like acidity that kind of comes in the back, and it's really, I can feel it right up here by my kind of jaw area. In terms of the tannins are super, super fine, very silky. There's a little bit of a chalkiness to the finish, but the tannins are very much in keeping with the Guiberteau style of tannins, which is all about refinement and just finesse and fine, silky tannins. You know, this wine is lean. It's ethereal, it's very, very graceful. It's all about finesse here. And it's amazing because it packs quite a punch. You know, there's a lot of concentration here. There's a lot going on as well in terms of flavor profiles, but it is in this beautifully lean, delicate frame, which is really beautiful. It's quite fluid as well, which I noted in my notes when I was tasting this earlier, is that there is like just this kind of continuous note, as if you're a soloist, a musician that is just holding a note for a very, very long period of time. And that's not to say that that isn't interesting, but it's just this long, graceful pause that you feel as you kind of enjoy the wine. And there's little kind of flutters of interesting things that are happening as you're enjoying it, but it's like very fluid and very harmonious, which I really, really love. This wine is truly one of the great Cabernet Francs from the Loire Valley. And if you are not familiar with Domaine Guiberteau, this is definitely one to have on your radar. You know, there's some good pedigree here. We're talking some exceptional sites in terms of Cabernet Franc and Chenin for that matter as well. But Domaine Guiberteau is truly one of the great estates for Cabernet Franc in the Loire Valley, and one that I always love revisiting. I actually have a little bit more experience with the Domaine wine and the cuvée Les Moulins compared to Les Arboises, but this was really a fascinating one to dive into today. And honestly, it's really impressive how well the oak is integrated, even just at such a young stage in the wine's life. And I think it's only that wood will only kind of melt away, I think, over time as the wine continues to mature. If you've had this wine from Domaine Guiberteau, or if you have another favorite wine from Domaine Guiberteau, do let me know what that wine is in the comments below. And of course, as always, I will be back again soon with another wine. Cheers.